I'll tell you, some teachers don't ever go back and review, and they don't review for test either. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this one, and then we're going to review for the test. And then we'll do the treatments on Tuesday. So you'll have a quick turnaround for Thursday's test because we're not going to get those PowerPoints till then. But this piece we got to do more on because the substitution studies are a big piece of this test. Okay, this is so interesting, and these are becoming more problems than bleeding problems. And I went ahead, and then I'm going to give you the chapters. 34 for circulating anticoagulants and 35 for hypercoagulable. And naturally, I'm not going to take questions that don't relate to the topic. I'm not going to be like unfair. Your lab methods, the PowerPoint, and then the study guide, all of those are posted. So the hypercoagulable, there's only one study guide. I didn't make two. And the lab methods, they're all posted. But the hypercoagulable, I have some really good articles. I'm not going to give any out. You can look on your own if you want to look them up. But there are some very interesting things that people are coming up with clotting disorders that have nothing to do with antithrombin 3 and protein CNS. And I don't know if any of you know Jana Ross that sets up all the biology labs, the anatomies. She has a condition that has caused clotting. And I used to draw her blood very often and run it, her purple top. And she has some of these. She has, I think, high levels of homocysteine. She might have factor V Leiden. These are becoming more prevalent than probably some of the bleeding disorders. So this is some of the stuff we're going to get into, and I'll just read you. I went ahead and highlighted some of the articles I got off Google. Very, very interesting. You tell me, well, and we'll see what you retain. Anybody tell me the three, it's a minor system, and they're the protease inhibitors. Can anybody name any of the protease inhibitors from the minor systems? The two that affect factors 5 and 8?
CNS.
Protein CNS. The two that work together to inhibit every factor but factor 7. They were a pair. Because all this we're going to talk about now.
You talked.
I thought you were saying it.
Is it thrombin and
Antithrombin 3, and what's its cofactor? Heparin. And then the last one was alpha-2 antiplasmin. Protein CNS, antithrombin 3, back in my day, were the only three things we sent out for if a patient came up with a blood clot. Hypercoagulable, you're clotting too much. Okay? And this is probably going to be more common happening to patients than the bleeding ones. The problem is you probably aren't going to get to do much with it. It'll be send-outs. You know? I don't know if anybody really does. Maybe you'll see an antithrombin 3 level done at some of your labs, but most of you will not see one test done for hypercoagulable. So these are the key ones we're gonna talk about. The most common one is number 3. The next common one is number 5. And so the ones I sent out for all the time are not even the most common ones anymore. You have mutations. And homocysteine you're going to see 2 times. You're going to see now in coag, and we're going to do urinary disorders where there's high levels of amino acid homocysteine in your kidney. And so, and then antiphospholipid antibodies, the one we talked about yesterday was the lupus anticoagulant. It still can be part of causing people to clot excessively. So this has become a big deal now. And the downfall is normal labs don't do a lot of the testing. They have to be sent to a reference lab. So we're gonna get into a little bit about each one of them. But the main thing you have to know is what things can cause excessive clotting that you can't keep up with breaking them down. probably of the first 5, factor V Leiden and prothrombin gene mutation, this one is going to be common that you will at least get to do. What test did we talk about yesterday that you can do at every common lab that screens for the lupus anticoagulant?
The PGT, incubate it for an hour.
Yep, you incubated extra time as a screening test. Which one didn't get any worse, the PTT, and which one got worse?
The LA didn't get worse in
The LA. And what does that one attack? What does it inhibit in the extrinsic and intrinsic system, the lupus anticoagulant? What is it acting on?
PF3, like the
PF3. So you have 2 places PF3 is. Where are they at? PF3 and your cascade that you had to know for intrinsic and extrinsic. Where are the 2 places in the boxes?
The box.
So where are they at? 5A, 10, PF3 calcium. Where's the second place in the intrinsic?
10.
9.
9A, 8, calcium and PF3. So both cofactors have PF3. That's where the lupus anticoagulant attacks. So it's non-specific because it affects both. What was the other one that got worse after the 60-minute incubation with PTT?
Specific factor.
And how might you get the specific inhibitors? What can do 2 conditions that you learned with clotting factor disorders?
Hemophilia A and B.
Because they might, especially in A, you might get 10 different human sources in that one vial per month. Your body says, wait a minute, I see that as foreign. I'm going to make an antibody to that, and that's an inhibitor. The inhibitor is the same thing as making an anti-factor 8 and an anti-factor 9. So they won't work. So if they can't find another source to give them for factor 8, they're up a creek. They have an inhibitor, their medicine doesn't work, so they can bleed. So that lupus anticoagulant, I know you'll see. And you could do at least the screening test in a normal lab. But of the ones that aren't common, factor V Leiden is number 1, and the prothrombin gene mutation is number 2. So we're going to get into that a little bit. So, and I thought it was interesting on, when I had to draw blood, I wanted to be able to go pick up my kids. So I said, hey, I'll do this. I will draw blood every day from 6 to 7, and then I started my department at 7. So I always had the heart floor. And so you get the same patients every week when they're in there a while because they have a heart attack or something. And number 1 was genetic, number 2 was smoking. So smoking a lot of times narrows the vessels. And so when you look at risks for even age over 50, a lot of people are going to have more chance of having clots. Diet, poor diet, increased women, especially my age, when you're menopausal and you take oral contraceptives, the biggest risk is having blood clots and having a heart attack and having a stroke. So I know that was the thing. I'm not going to deal with anything with taking oral contraceptives once I'm reached menopause because I didn't want the chance of having a heart attack or a blood clot. Some people can't handle going through menopause, so they go on estrogen because they can't handle all the things that come with it. Family history is a big one. Usually you'll see other parents, grandparents, like the case of my daughter's friend that has the protein C deficiency. They don't have anybody they know on either side, mom or dad's side, that they know has that. So that is really odd that you don't have anybody. Smoking, anytime you do something invasive, and when you're putting, a lot of times catheters go into your neck veins, and you're going to, something that's going to stay put, there's a chance you could clot with that access, and especially if they're cleaning around it and trying to keep it where it doesn't get infected. it's interesting, blood groups other than O, and I'm not really sure the reasoning why O is okay. And then naturally, anytime you have a trauma or a surgery, but the biggest ones are age, diet, family history, smoking. So those 4 you should be aware of, because those are, and especially the increased estrogen, naturally it's the women. That's a big deal, because men usually have a lower, shorter lifespan, but women have more opportunities with heart attack after menopause than ever before when they were younger. So the estrogen is a big deal, the use of it, especially as you age. Family history, smoking. You'll learn too, immunology, that age is a big deal with your immune system. Over 50, you have a thing called the thymus that helps your lymphocytes mature into T cells, and it decreases in size after 50 drastically. So your immune system, you need all your lymphocytes. Do you know your 2 types of lymphocytes
T
from anatomy?
lymphocytes and
What are 2? Well, there's. Go ahead. And what's your second one? It's another letter.
T and
B.
yeah.
So you're going to learn in immunology, there's 2 types of T cells. One's a helper, one's a cytotoxic, and then you're going to learn about the B cell is a producer of your antibodies. You wipe out your thymus, you're affecting all your T cells, which are big in fighting fungus, parasites, cancers. So age ends up being a big deal. And a lot of times it's after 50. So you see why you deteriorate as you get older. It affects your immune system, it affects your clotting system. So age is a big deal in a lot of the systems you'll come to. Okay, so antithrombin 3, if you know from our previous lecture, that inhibits all factors but 7. If you're a natural inhibitor, you're trying to keep your blood system in check. What is our goal with hemostasis? Smooth, continuous blood flow. So you don't want too much clotting. You don't want excessive bleeding. Okay? So you need these natural inhibitors. So if antithrombin 3 inhibits everything but factor 7, and you take away antithrombin 3 because you're deficient, you were genetically born with less, you're going to be prone to clotting because you need this natural inhibitor to keep smooth, continuous blood flow. So the first 3 that go together, is antithrombin 3, and then what did you say protein CNS act on? Okay, so this inhibits all factors but 7. This inhibits factors 5 and 8. Okay? They keep them, remember, with anytime you have an injured vessel and anytime you need to stop the bleeding, you form a clot. Well, if you don't get rid of that clot, you're going to have a thrombus. And if that thrombus breaks off and travels, you're going to have an embolus. Okay? So you need natural inhibitory substances. Just like we said, thrombin in low amounts forms the fibrin clot. In high amounts, it says, hey, plasmin, we need you. Let's get down and break this clot up so it doesn't get widespread. These inhibitors, antithrombin 3 and protein CNS, are there for a reason. They're helping to maintain smooth, continuous blood flow. You are deficient in them genetically. You're born without them. You're going to be prone to blood clot. Like the case of the protein C with my daughter's friend, hers was being sitting too long on an airplane, going overseas. It was too long a flight, and if you can't get up, let's say it's turbulent, they don't even want you out of your seat. So it's not like you can get up and walk the aisles just because you want to. So think of these, if you don't have them, you're going to be more prone to clotting because they help keep your blood, continuous blood flow.
Is that why they tell you to like move your legs around while you're on the plane?
And what's the furthest away from your heart? So it's going to be the hardest circulation is your feet, especially. Yeah. And both times hers was a calf, a deep vein thrombosis in the calf. Now, I told you with their pregnancy, she took Lovenox. She had injections of heparin in her every day, her whole pregnancy. And then 6 weeks after the baby, she develops a pulmonary embolism. I mean, you could have died if it's in the right place in the lung. You don't want it traveling from a vein down in your calf to your lung, heart, or have a stroke in your brain. So I'm sure she's very scared. She's only 32, and you've had 3 major blood clots and no family history, and so she'll probably be on Coumadin or something for life because they tried to take her off Coumadin, and then naturally as a girl you can't be on contraceptives that are estrogen, because the combination of estrogen and you already have a blood clotting disorder, you're opening yourself up to die from something with a blood clot. So these are the most common send-outs ever since my time, in 81 even. So the doctor would order, I want to know an antithrombin 3 level, then I want to do a protein CNS. And these, as we see, are not even on the list as the most common hypercoagulable disorders. The lupus anticoagulant, then of the mutations, you have the factor V we'll get into, and the prothrombin mutation. They are more common than those 3. So we know, and the one thing, homocysteine is one that they can even be prone to having a blood clot in the artery. Most of these are blood clots in a vein. Okay, so this one is venous. So it's usually a blood clot in the vein. So all 3 are venous. Now protein CNS, so you keep your 2 cofactors in check. You don't let them overwork because they're the main workhorses that get your clotting systems going, because 5 is a common factor, 8 is in the intrinsic. So if you're deficient, protein CNS are a team, and it doesn't matter if you're missing one or the other, you're still not going to inhibit factor 5 and 8. And if you can't inhibit 5 and 8, they're going to have excessive activity that can be prone to promoting more clot formation. So we know this is all factors but 7. From when we did minor systems, this inhibits factors 5 and 8, the cofactors. And it's interesting that they're also the labile factors. Yes?
If you are clotting in an artery versus a vein, does it affect you differently?
I would think the artery, if you can close off an artery, you're probably going to have more chance of dying, just because, like if your aorta or the femoral artery, or I think there's a mesenteric artery, you're probably going to have more life-threatening than a venous one. But the main one that's arterial too is high levels of homocysteine. So far, everything that I think is on the list that we have is venous only. And venous problems, I'm not minimizing them, but if you can block an artery with all that pressure, you're going to probably be more impactful for death. But the only one I think of the group is arterial is high homocysteine levels. So remember, you got to know what they act on. Antithrombin 3, all factors but 7. Naturally, the name, antithrombin, that's its main one. And factor 10A, those are its main 2. But technically, it is against all factors but 7. And then protein CNS, it's the 2 cofactors. This one is so interesting. I find the activated protein C resistance. So this is just some statistics about factor V Leiden. They're linked. Factor V Leiden is a mutated factor V. And you know, when we're talking about coag, the factor has to become an activated factor. Like 11 becomes 11A, 10 becomes 10A, 9 becomes 9A. Well, protein C and S, protein C is the main one of the pair. So they talk about protein A stands for activated protein C. If you cannot activate protein C, you cannot inhibit factors 5 and 8. So when a person has factor V Leiden, and what does protein C and S act on? Factors 5 and 8. If you have a mutated factor V, it says, I don't care if you are activated and you're going to inhibit me. I'm mutated, you can't touch me, you're not going to inhibit me. So they are one and the same. When you hear the terms activated protein C, it's written like that in the books. It stands for activated protein C resistance. If I have a mutated factor V, it is not normal factor V. And protein C gets activated, it cannot touch me. It cannot inhibit me. But if I'm normal factor V, you know, like Lorian's normal, and I'm the factor V Leiden, my protein C gets activated, it can inhibit her and it won't clot. It won't be part of the common factors with ProTime, PTT. So these two are connected because there's two test methods they can do. If they suspect your clotting problem is due to factor V Leiden, and most of the time they'll do a panel of tests. They'll do antithrombin 3, protein C and S, they can do factor V Leiden, they can do an activated protein C resistance, they can do DNA testing is becoming the way, molecular testing. They can do a prothrombin mutation test. So they can say, I want to see what's causing their blood clots. And they can do a homocysteine level. So you could order all 7 of these and you're going to get an idea what their problem is. So many times it's going to be a panel. Because if you don't know and you don't have any family history, you've got to look at all of them. So think of this. If you have normal factor V, protein C is going to inhibit it. And it won't let it go wild. It will only do its job where the trauma was. If you have a mutated factor V, so just remember, the prothrombin problem we'll get to, and the factor V Leiden, they're mutations. The gene is not the same factor V that most people have. Okay? A mutated factor V, protein C, when it's activated, cannot inhibit it. So the doctor can order 2 ways to look at it. He says, I want to do the gene test for factor V. Or he can say, I want to order the activated protein C resistance test. And one of the readings, what they do, they can add activated protein C to a patient's plasma, and they do a PTT. Well, look at it this way. If I do my PTT and I'm normal, it's going to be between 28 and 36 seconds. And I'm clotting excessively, so I want to see if the problem is activated protein C resistance because of a mutated V. So what they do is they take your plasma, they add activated protein C. What do you think should happen to that PTT if factor V gets inhibited? It should increase, right? Because if you don't have your common factor V, you're not going to get to fibrinogen to become the fibrin clot, right? Because that's 10, 5, 2, and 1. Well, people who have factor V Leiden, their PTT stays the same. It doesn't affect them. It doesn't elevate because that activated protein C cannot inhibit the factor V. So that sounds like a pretty neat test to do. I would love to do some special coag test. So all I want you don't have to tell me anything about how to do the test. You've got to see the link between these two. Factor V Leiden will not let protein C do its job. If you have a mutation in your factor V and you get protein C activated, it's not going to do anything to stop 5 from doing its job. So these are linked. So I don't want you to think, well, wait a minute, what's activated protein C resistance mean versus what's factor V? They're tied together. The physician can attack how he learns about it in 2 ways. He can say, oh, I just want to do the DNA test for factor V Leiden and see if it's present. Or he can say, no, I want to do the activated protein C resistance because if that PTT does not get longer, I know it's factor V Leiden. And this, to me, seems like the more cost-effective test to order. So when you read in the chapter, they're linked. Okay, so this is after the lupus anticoagulant, this is going to be your second most common cause of a blood clot. And it's venous. So far we haven't seen any that are associated with arterial. But I thought this was interesting. It is the most common hereditary blood coagulation disorder in the United States. Lupus anticoagulant, is it hereditary? First got secondary from another condition. It can be someone with pregnancy, it can be someone with lupus, it can be someone with another serological disorder that you'll learn. This is the most common hereditary, okay? So genetic one. And it says it increases the risk of venous thrombosis 3 to 8-fold if you only get it from one parent. It increases it 30 to 100-fold if you get it from both parents. And it's most common in the white population. It's like 5%, and it's only 1% in the African American population. And so the next one should be the other one on here, which is, oh, the homocysteine's interesting too. This is a amino acid, so you at least should be aware it's amino acid. And this is the one Jana has. It was just interesting. She was having so many issues, so I don't know if she had a stroke on one side, her platelet count was affected. She just had so much going on. Well, this is linked to both venous and arterial thrombosis, high levels. And it says blood levels of homocysteine, a sulfur-containing amino acid, have been linked to increased risk of, a big one is coronary artery disease, stroke, and the DVTs. Even among people who have normal cholesterol. You know how everybody worries about their cholesterol and their good cholesterol? Well, this is a big deal too. So anybody who's having heart attacks in their family history, I want to know my homocysteine level too, not just if my good cholesterol, and my cholesterol should be under 200, but I also want a high good cholesterol, which this is all chemistry. But I would want to know about this homocysteine. It appears to do 3 ways. A direct toxic effect that damages the cell linings of the arteries, interference with clotting factors, kind of like uremia. When you have buildup of waste products, the platelets and the clotting factors don't work properly. It sounds like you have high levels of homocysteine, your clotting factors aren't going to work properly either. And almost like they're overactivated. And then it looks like it increases LDL. Anybody hear of LDL versus HDL? If anybody knows anything about chemistry, it's usually glucose and cholesterol they know something about. Bad cholesterol. There's even a VLDL, a very low lipoprotein. But all of these have a connection. So if you have a family history of heart attack, I would want to know if my homocysteine levels are normal. The other interesting thing I thought was about homocysteine, guess what they sometimes give them to help increase their homocysteine? You'll learn about these with Diane. Folic acid, B12, and even sometimes B6. And Diane, you'll learn there's certain anemias if you're deficient in B12 if you're deficient in folic acid, if you're deficient in a thing called pernicious anemia. So all the connections. Now you see, you might be anemic, but you also might have high levels of homocysteine because you don't have enough of these vitamins, and then you're going to be prone to blood clotting. So this homocysteine is a big deal, and Jana is full proof of it. I mean, at first she goes, Jean, I just have so many health issues now, and now it's all related to different levels, and she's making her, and she has it in her family history. Her sister, and her dad. And at the time when I was drawing her blood, it was more like 10 years ago, we were going through it, she wasn't even 50, and she was having all these troubles. And so, so you know, factor V Leiden, homocysteine. So these are the three most common that we've ordered forever. And now you're seeing they're finding factor V Leiden and how it makes it resistant to protein C. High levels of homocysteine and amino acid. And the third one I'm going to have you know for your test is this prothrombin mutation. And the only one so far that's affected arterial thrombosis has been high levels of homocysteine. So if you at least know that, the others have been venous. Okay? And this one I think is really interesting too. This prothrombin. I just copied something today off Google. It is a mutation of what? Prothrombin. Okay? And it is, I thought I had copied it. It was interesting too. It is a mutation of factor 2. Oh, here it is. So, factor V Leiden is a mutation of factor 5. Factor 2, or prothrombin, is a mutation of factor 2. It's the second most common inherited. So what's the most common clotting disorder? The lupus, anticoagulant. But that's not inherited. That is secondary to another condition. What's the most common inherited?
Activated protein C.
With factor V Leiden being the cause. And then the second most common inherited is the mutated factor 2. Okay? So, this is what it says. Second most common. It is more common than protein C and antithrombin 3 deficiency. 2% of the population is heterozygous, meaning you only get it from one parent. It is if you have it, which kind of makes sense. If you have multiple problems with the things that can trigger clotting, naturally you're going to have a worse condition and worse clots. So that kind of makes sense. You know how with clotting factor deficiencies, you usually only have one deficiency if it's genetic, unless maybe you have liver disease. Then you're going to have multiple factor deficiencies because your liver can't produce them. In hypercoagulable states, it is common to have more than one problem. So you might have high homocysteine levels. You might also have a mutated factor 5, and you're going to have problems clotting because you don't have enough stuff that inhibits it. So that's the one thing it says. This prothrombin combined with other clotting disorders like factor V Leiden, your dramatic increase on the formation of blood clots. And my other one said how this one works. Tell me how factor V Leiden inhibits protein C. You know, so it doesn't let protein C break it down and stop its activity. That's not how prothrombin works. There's nothing that it's blocking inhibition. It says people who have the mutation in the prothrombin gene produce more prothrombin than normal. Since there is more of this prothrombin in the blood, it increases their tendency to form clots. So this mutation doesn't let protein C do its job. Prothrombin mutation makes prothrombin be excessively produced and you have too much in circulation, you're going to have a tendency to clot. So they work two different ways. There's not more of factor V if you have factor V Leiden. It doesn't let protein C do its job. Oh shoot, is someone out there?
I'm not. I don't remember if there was a
I don't
class
know
in
when
here.
that lady. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we're good. I forgot. They must have had mold in the classroom. And until they get it all taken care of, they must have to move. That's my understanding. Okay, so factor V Leiden doesn't make factor V excessive, but prothrombin mutation, it makes it increase. And once again, it's venous. So the only one that's been arterial has been homocysteine levels. So what can you do? And we'll stop here for what you'd have to know. Even abnormal factor 1s, and to me, this is common sense, but these will be the 7 that relate to what we've talked about. They'll send out levels of antithrombin 3. And some of your labs will do an antithrombin 3 level on their analyzer. So you might see that. Remember, if you don't have enough antithrombin 3, you can't inhibit all factors but 7. It doesn't have a role with 7. They'll send out protein C and S levels. If you're deficient, it cannot inhibit 5 and 8. So they don't know their limits and they keep activating and forming more clots. They're your 2 big factors as cofactors. So these aren't as common as this and this in the LA. Activated protein C resistance. In your textbooks, you see it like this, APCR, but that's what it stands for. They're linked. So remember, if factor V is mutated, protein C can inhibit it. Okay? If factor V is normal, protein C says, you're not doing any more clotting. Okay? Homocysteine levels, it's an amino acid that builds up more commonly if you're deficient in folic acid and B12 and B6. So that is the only one that's venous and arterial blood clots. And really you can do DNA or PCR as polymerase chain reaction. You're gonna, in your careers, you're gonna see more what they call molecular diagnostics. They can amplify a piece of DNA, a piece of RNA, just a little bit of a sequence of amino acid. They can amplify it and detect what's present. And in micro, it is changing the face of micro. They can ID some bacteria now, that's what Barnes is switching to, a thing called MALDI-TOF, that they can ID this bacteria in an infection within 2 hours. Cultures take 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. You have TB can take 8 weeks, and they're going to be able to turn out an identification in 2 hours because of this PCR or DNA testing. So the factor V Leiden and the prothrombin, they can do a DNA test on it to detect if it's present. Okay? Like we said with the activated protein C resistance test, it's just like when we did platelet aggregation and you add an aggregator. Well, this time they do plasma and they add activated protein C. Well, it should inhibit 5 and 8, right? If you have a mutated 5, that PTT is going to not going to get worse. It's going, if it was 30 seconds, it's going to stay at 30 seconds because that protein C can't inhibit factor V Leiden. I think that's the test. If you ever get to do a test for factor V Leiden, it's going to be the activated protein C resistance because it seems a pretty easy test without having to have fancy equipment or expensive equipment to do it. And then the lupus anticoagulant. Remember, that is not a genetic disorder. Usually you have some other condition preceding it. Even if it's not a sickness. Like people with pregnancy can develop a lupus anticoagulant. People with infections can develop a lupus anticoagulant. People with, I don't know if you've heard of anything besides lupus, rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disorder. There's a thing called scleroderma. There's a thing called Sjogren's. So remember, it's secondary to a condition. When you get something like factor V Leiden or prothrombin, you're born with it. It's a primary problem. You're born with it genetically. So remember, LA is probably the most common blood clotting problem you'll see, but it's not genetic. You are not born with it. You get it secondary to something else. So, what are the key risks for getting a blood clot? What are the 4 key risks? Age, over 50, diet, smoking, family history. Those are your biggest. And probably I would put family history and smoking, when it comes to blood clots, as probably your top 2. Tell me, you're the physician, you have no family history that you can tell, what are you going to order? And you worry about the blood clots. So what test are you going to order if you're no family history to go by that you know anybody has something?
Factor V.
Thrombin 3, protein C and S,
And
homocysteine levels, because that could be like a chemistry test if they have an analyzer that detects homocysteine. And then you're going to have to do molecular diagnostics or a PCR for factor V Leiden or prothrombin, the 20210. And if they don't have the capabilities of doing a PCR type amplification of DNA test for the factor V Leiden, they can order an activated protein C resistance. And then what can you do to screen for the lupus anticoagulant at any normal lab?
Have a PTT for incubating for an hour.
And tell me what was the second thing in the PTT reagent we discussed yesterday. We know the activator represents collagen to get 12 going. That was from your previous test.
PF3 or
The
phospholipid.
PF3 or phospholipid. That's a big deal. Why do you have to provide that with your blue top? Because when you spin it fast, where are the platelets? In the Buffy coat. You have to then supply a phospholipid or PF3 source. And the PTT reagent does that. Okay, so you guys can go to the bathroom. Oh, let's see. I don't even know. I am at the end. Okay, this is what we'll do. You can go to the bathroom and get a drink, and then we're going to review. Yes?
That homocysteine, I'm a little confused about what it does. Is it not able to inhibit thrombin?
No. That's a good point, because I didn't continue. It affects protein C. If you have high levels of homocysteine, it says the protein C enzyme inhibits homocysteine levels, inhibits the expression and activity of protein C activation.
So does it?
So high levels of homocysteine won't let protein C act either. So a good test question would be, what all affects protein C? Out of all of these things we just learned, there's a lot that affects protein C.
And you're talking about which ones were venous and which ones were arterial?
There was only one arterial, but all of them are venous.
Okay, yeah. I knew.
Which one was the only one that was both?
Was it the
Prothrombin?
hemocysteine?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the only one that's both.
Okay.
So this question, tell me every one of these disorders, or whether it be genetic or acquired, affects protein C in some way.
Mutated factor V.
So factor V Leiden is one.
Homocysteine.
High homocysteine levels won't let protein C do its job. And what were the 3 I said were back in my time? If you're deficient in.
Protein C and S.
Mhm.
And
So if they order your protein C and S levels, like I said, all three of these affect protein C's function. The girl, you know, my daughter's friend, she is deficient genetically in protein C. So she has this problem. Jana, I think Jana has both these problems. I think she had high levels of homocysteine and she was the presence of a factor V Leiden. Remember, factor V Leiden, protein C won't work. It won't inhibit it. And homocysteine levels won't let protein C do its job. So these all affect protein C's job in some capacity. The prothrombin mutation, it just makes excessive prothrombin that make it prone to clotting. And antithrombin 3, it can inhibit all those factors. The only one that isn't affected is 7.
So I have this wrote down, just want to make sure I'm right. If mutated, the factor V Leiden can, factor V Leiden, if mutated protein C can inhibit.
Protein C can't inhibit factor V if your factor V is the mutated form. Protein C won't work on it. Protein C will only work if it's a normal factor V and it's not mutated. Okay, so I think we're going to review by doing the substitution studies first. So I'm going to put different scenarios up, and you'll have people who will say, I'll go do that one. Yes?
Sorry. The protein CNS, the problem is that it's deficient, right?
Yes. They have low levels. So their problem is they don't make enough. No one has problem with their factor V. No one has high homocysteine levels. They just don't make enough, and that's her problem. Her S is normal. It's her C that is low, and they're a team. So if one's low, neither one can work properly. So when you order a protein CNS, you're just seeing if the quantity is good enough. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. I'll put some examples on the board, and then I'll try to put every example on the board, and then everybody can volunteer for one they feel comfortable with. So if someone wants to, or if you have the worksheet I gave you, that has all the Azoroplasma, H serum, intrinsic. So if everybody has this worksheet, it has everything you need on the top, so I don't have to write them on the board, or you can use mine. If you're going to do a problem and you don't have yours with you. So I'll start with test methods. So we have about 50 minutes, close to 50 minutes, 45 to review for the test. Okay. And I am just going to go around and put up the ProTime and PTT results. And we're going to say, and I'll do patient plus normal. Well, I guess I have to put them all up. If someone will help me out and put this part up, I need 9 spots. So I'm going to put 4 here. If you guys can put, when I'm putting just on the left side up, then I'll come and put the results. And I am not going to put what test you run. Whoever comes and does it, well, you'll kind of see what test I run by the results. So I guess I will, because you'll see it by the results I have to give. So don't put this piece, because it'll be different for what results I get. But if you'll write this 5 times over there, Lorian, will you write it 2 times there? I think we need 9 examples. And the little PT is patient. The big PT is ProTime. And then I'm going to show you another form to put it in so you see how you do it and look at it in another way. Let's see. Oh, I know what I'm missing. I got it. Okay, so hopefully 9 of you will volunteer to go to yours and then you'll explain it. So everybody needs to have this sheet in front of them or copy someone else's. And then, so everybody want to take, if you want to just go to one or I'll assign you to one. Because I want you guys to explain, because sometimes you guys might have a better way of saying it that everybody will understand better than me. Oh, here's one. I always hear Chris, need a big one?
Perfect.
Sorry, I don't know about the chalk. You might have to borrow. Okay, so Stephen, you gonna do one? Nicole, you gonna do one? Lorraine, you wanna try one? Are you doing that one, Tiana?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna
Okay, so there's one here, there's one more back there. Lauren, you want, or Nicole, you want to do this one? Lauren, you want to try that one? And
Can I do it on my paper?
and then go up. And this is not to put anybody on the spot. So some people do better if they have to try it, and then you guys might be able to explain it better. that maybe someone, it'll click for someone. Everybody just need, and I'll put this up on the Elmo. That way you'll see the clotting factors. I'll do that. I'll put it on the Elmo. Okay, I can't get it, the autofocus doesn't seem to want to work much. But at least you have it up there too if you don't. And I don't care if you explain it from your seat, it's your choice. If you don't want to stand up there. And I don't care if you put a way that you cross out, you just might have a better way someone understands better than what we've done previously in class.
Jean,
Yes.
I'm getting how to like, knowing which one is corrected and which one is not corrected. The one I'm having a problem with is like the factor part, finding out which one, like I'm so confused.
Well, normal, if it corrects with normal plasma, you know it's a factor because that reagent has every factor.
Right.
Then you got to know your factors that are in plasma. If it corrects with one of those, it provided a factor that it had, 1, 5, 8, 11, and 12. Or if H serum made a corrected result, then it provided 7, 9, 10, 11, or 12. Now, the other thing I want everybody to go back and put, if they didn't, at normal plasma, you should be able to tell me what factors are the possibility if it corrected there. So I want to see what are the possibilities above your normal plasma. Don't just say corrected or didn't correct. Where do you have it? Oh, okay. Put it right here above normal plasma. Put it right above, and maybe that'll help you. Because that's something you know from test 2, based on what the ProTime and PTT did. So put it right above normal plasma. Because that's from test 2. All you got to now know is your factors in adsorbed plasma and H serum. And you tell me which of those 4 it is because of the reagent factor. So you got to memorize these. You got to know those.
I know those, but I'm saying I'm confused by the normal.
But it can only be.
I don't see how did you figure out which numbers are those.
Well, where's 10 at in H serum? So it would have to correct with 10. Where's 5 and 1 at in adsorbed plasma? So it would have to correct here. Where's 2 at in neither? So it couldn't have corrected. It couldn't have been normal results. So let's see how by you guys explaining yours, if some people who are not getting it, get it. Maybe you have a better way of explaining it. Because sometimes just a different explanation, then all of a sudden the light turns on. So it'll be good for everybody to hear how other people go through it. Okay, number 1, I guess, Nicole?
Yeah. So that one, both the PT and PTT were elevated, so I knew it had to be common factor, which was 10, 5, 2, and 1. And since it corrected with the absorbed plasma, the H serum. The only factor that's in the H serum is 10. So,
And what did this tell you? How did you know it had to be a factor?
because it corrected.
It corrected. Does everybody see? This is the key step. You do not even do this if it doesn't correct when you add all the clotting factors, okay? Number 2.
So how I like to do it is by crossing things out. So I write everything that's in the extrinsic, intrinsic, and everything. It's not anything in the extrinsic because the PT is normal. So I went ahead and crossed out all the common factors that are in extrinsic and intrinsic. And then PTT's increased, so I knew it had to be something in there. It's a clotting factor.
So what factors, based on test 2, did you know when it corrected with normal plasma it was a factor? What were the 4?
It had to be 12, 11, 9.
You guys know this part from test 2. This is nothing new, okay? It helps to me if you write this down when you know it corrected, okay?
And then it corrected with absorbed plasma and H serum, so I know it had to be something that was in both, and then that were also in the intrinsic, so 11 and 12.
And then what would you do with that? Since it's down to 2 factors, what would the doctor do?
Is those two the same numbers in intrinsic that she got circled?
11 and 12?
No,
They're,
intrinsic, right there.
they're 11 and 12. There's just, you can't see the extra one. So they were not eliminated. New was intrinsic because it was the PTT test elevated.
Mm-hmm.
And 11 and 12, it corrected with normal plasma, so you know you're looking at a factor, one of those 4, because that the PTT told you that. Then absorbed plasma and H serum, if you look, 11 and 12 are in both of them. And it corrected. It went to normal value with both adsorbed plasma, that has 11 and 12. H serum had 11 or 12. So you couldn't get down to more than 11 or 12. And a factor assay is what they'd order. Okay, number 3.
Okay, I had an increased PT, so that gets rid of the intrinsic system. So whenever I put normal plasma in, it corrected, so it could be anything, but it also did with serum, so I'm down to 7, 9, 10, 11, 12. Eliminate 11 and 12 because both are not fixed. Eliminate 10 because it's a common factor. 9 goes with the PTT, so factor 7 is.
And why wasn't it factor 3?
You already have that.
It's the reagent. And it's in all tissues, so it's not going to be deficient. Okay, so that was your only elevated protein one. Okay, so what was number 4?
The protein is normal, the PTT is increased. It did fix with normal plasma, so we know it would have to be 11, 12, 9, and 8.
Okay, so I would do this on your test. This tells you, when you get to this point, you can get down to at least 4 factors. It's one of them, okay?
I knew it couldn't be 11 or 12, and it fixed with absorbed H serum, so I said it was 9.
Okay, so it's Christmas disease. Okay, number 5.
Number 5, both proton and PTT are increased. So once it fixes normal plasma, you know it's a common factor of 10, 5, 2, or 1. When you look at H serum, or actually neither of them corrected. So the H serum has 10 that you can cross out, and the plasma has the 1 and 5 that doesn't fix it, so you can cross that out, and you're just left with factor 2.
And does everybody see why it didn't correct? Do you see 2 in either of these? No. So you're not going to make it better. Remember, this adsorbed plasma is adding those 5 factors. H serum is adding. And remember, you just take 50 microliters or 500 microliters of patient plasma and add the same amount of their little vials of these reagents. Okay? So did you write factor 2 somewhere, or am I just blocked? Oh, up there.
Top, yeah.
Sorry. Okay, 6.
The PT is normal, the PTT is elevated, so you know it's an intrinsic factor, and it corrected with normal plasma, so it has to be pill 11, 9, or 8. It corrected with the absorbed plasma, so it has to be factor 8, because otherwise, if it was 11 or 12, it would have corrected with the H serum as well.
Okay, and if it was factor 9, as we saw, it would have only corrected with H serum and not absorbed plasma. Okay? Number 7.
The, let's see, the PT was elevated and it said run the PT. So the,
So both were elevated.
yeah, actually both of them were elevated.
Okay.
I looked at that. The normal plasma corrected it, the H serum did not, and the H plasma did correct it. So, I ran down the list and it couldn't be anything in the H plasma. I came up with 1 and 5.
Okay, so what 4 factors could it be when they're both elevated? Will you add that, Chris? I don't see 10. Do you realize it can be 10, 5, 2, or 1? After normal plasma, you know it's one of those 4 factors. Okay? So you didn't have 10 up there. I just wanted to have that
Okay.
up there.
Yeah, so it was one of the common factors. So.
Right. And you know 10 is an H serum, and you see it didn't correct. So that eliminated 10. You know 2 is not in either of those reagents, so you eliminate 2 because it corrected with absorbed plasma. The 2 things left in absorbed plasma are 1 or 5. And we already did the test in lab, so what would be the first test you do if you get it's 1 or 5? The fibrinogen. Almost every lab is going to have a capabilities of doing a fibrinogen level. Okay? Number 8.
So at first glance, I didn't write the.
Oh, that's okay because
Until you said
of
so.
why.
But as soon as you look at it, if you look at the normal plasma first, then you realize it didn't correct, so then you already know it can't be any kind of.
It can't be a factor deficiency. So now it could be a lupus inhibitor or a specific factor inhibitor, a circulating anticoagulant, if you know they're not on heparin or Coumadin. Most of your elevated protimes and PTTs, I guarantee you, are going to be because they're on an anticoagulant. You're not going to find many of the other problems. So I would not have had to run adsorb plasma and H serum. Does everybody understand that? It just was easier when we had the test to do all 3 at once. Then you had it done, you know. And if you didn't need them, you just didn't use those results. Okay, number 9.
Both PT and PTT were incorrect or elevated. It was corrected with normal plasma and absorbed plasma. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, absorbed plasma.
So tell me after normal plasma, write up what 4 factors it could have been. After this first step. Right on the board because I don't see them listed.
Normal plasma has all of them.
No,
It was correct.
back on the first step up there, what does that tell you it has to be? One of the common factors. So just write them up there. 10, 5, 2, and 1. That's what you know from test 2. Okay? Already, just on normal plasma, you know there. Now go.
Because it wasn't corrected with the absorbed H serum, I wrote them out and it's not going to be one of the 2 common factors, so that's gone from the absorbed plasma. Then the only 2 that are actual factors in the same extrinsic system as well as absorbed plasma is 1, so it can only be the only 2 common factors between
So what was your answer? What was left?
factor 1, fibrinogen.
No, because that was the scenario over there. Well, what, did I do 2 of the same scenarios?
Yeah.
Oh, it's 1 or 5. Do you see why 5 has to be a choice too? What scenario did I?
H serum.
Yeah, both are plasma.
Okay, so that was my fault. I put two of the same ones. It can be one or, do you see why 5 is not eliminated?
Yeah, because it's not a factor in.
No, both pro time and PTT are elevated, so it has to be 10, 5, 2, or 1. So you're not worried about if it's in extrinsic or intrinsic. It has to be a common factor.
But you had to run the PT.
But because you run the fastest test, you could have ran the PTT, but you might as well run the shortest test it takes to run.
If I had run the PTT, though, then it could have been a factor.
No, they both have 10, 5, 2, and 1 in them.
Because they're common factor.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so do you see, sorry, I put the same problem. So which one am I missing?
There was only 8 on our practice problems.
Even with the circulating, even with the one Tiana did? Oh, okay, then I have 2 of the same one. This, to me, helps you guys, because then you can do this. It's one of those. It corrected in both. It has to be something common in both. And right away, you see the only thing common in both is 11 or 12. If it was 8 or 9, it would have been only there for 8, so that eliminates 8. If it was 9, it would have been only elevated here. So to me, if you put the little 4 factors right there, you can cross it off just by what these give you. And so who had the 2? Stephen? Or no, you had the factor 2? And do you see with Stevens, what were you? You were number 5?
Yeah.
He knew it was, on Stevens, he knew it was 10, 5, 2, or 1. But do you see 10 was in age serum? He could eliminate that because it wasn't corrected. 1 and 5 were in adsorbed He could eliminate those 2 because they weren't corrected. The only thing left was 2, and it shouldn't have corrected because it wasn't present. Okay, so let me show you a different scenario of these and see if you can get it. It's applying the same information to a different format. And what you want to do on your test is write this on it. Right when you sit down, put it somewhere. Put it on the front of your test, or I can give you a scratch piece of paper. So what if I said this? And we're going to say they all correct with normal plasma. So you don't have to know if it's a factor or not. It is. And this is increased and this is normal. And then C is corrected, NC is not corrected. So I'm not going to give you results, I'm going to give you symbols, and you tell me what they are. You got to tell me which factor it is. I'm going to put different ones up. You know they all corrected with normal plasma, so I don't have to put normal plasma. We know it's a factor. You got to tell me what factor it is. I'm putting all 8 up in a different format, and it's all the 8 we've done except we know it's not a circulating anticoagulant. So let's do these 4 first. So what is the problem here? You know from test 2 what it could be down to 4 factors right here. Tell me what the elevated protein tells you here. What factors could it be?
7.
Why can't it be 3? It's the reagent. Okay? So how do you know, how did I prove that it was 7? That's your easiest one, the elevated protein. What is 7 in?
H plus.
So 7 is here.
Okay.
So, and it corrected with age serum, so we know it's 7. That's your easiest one because that's the only factor it can be with an elevated protein. Now, tell me what you know are your choices with an elevated PTT only. What are the 4 choices? Now, look what it corrected with and look what's in them. What factor is it? Why is it 8? Absorbed plasma, and guess what's in absorbed plasma? 8. Is 11 and 12? Yes, but it should have corrected with both. Is 9? No, it's an H serum. So this one is factor 8. So tell me this scenario. I gave you all 3 scenarios. We know what's the 4 choices. 12, 11, 9, or 8. Now which one is it? And because 9 is only in H serum, if it corrected, 9 is what was needed to be replaced. And then the last scenario, it's still what? 12, 11, 9, or 8. Now which ones are they? You can't get any better than 11 and 12 because you have to do another test. So you'd have to give me that as your choice. So this is another format you got to be able to understand. Okay? So let's do the other 3. I won't erase them. I'll keep those up because you got to be able to know them in that format as well. So now you tell me what are my other 3 I need. There's 3 that have both elevated. You tell me what I should write. We haven't done any with the common factors, so we know they're going to be 10, 5, 2, or 1, 10, 5, 2, or 1, 10. So what's the ProTime and PTT is going to be?
Elevated.
Both elevated. Does everybody understand this part? This is test 2. If they're both elevated, it's a common factor. Now tell me corrected or not corrected for all 4 of them.
Not corrected, corrected.
Not corrected, corrected.
Corrected, not corrected.
Corrected, not corrected.
And then not corrected, not corrected.
Okay, case 1. It's a common factor because they're both elevated. Everybody at least get that? Now tell me of the common factors, which one is in H serum only? 10. Okay, so there's 10. It's nowhere else. Okay, tell me on the next scenario, what's only in absorbed plasma of the common factors and not in H serum? And then you'd have to do another test like the fibrinogen. Okay? And then tell me the last scenario. What is not in either of them? So it couldn't correct. 2. Okay, so you got to know how to do the factor was this way and how we did them on the board. Okay, you got to be able to take your information and apply it different scenarios. So tell me on platelet aggregation, because that was, if I'm a screening test, what's my screening test for platelet function? 2 choices.
Bleeding time or PFA.
Okay, so we know the bleeding time would be above 9 minutes. What about the PFA 100? Which one does it have to be if it's aspirin? And what little cartridges have to be abnormal? How long it takes to clot if it's a real platelet function problem?
3 minutes.
I'm sorry, what?
Isn't it 3 minutes?
Well, no, which cartridge? There's collagen epi, I think, and collagen ADP on your PowerPoint. And I gave you a handout too. So the collagen, I think I have the PowerPoint right here so we don't mess up. Collagen epi, and it's on PFA 100 on your, it's on your page 2 of the PowerPoint I gave you. Collagen epi is the only one abnormal for aspirin, and collagen epi and collagen ADP are both abnormal if it's a platelet function problem. Some of you might still see the bleeding time if they have no PFA 100. I hope a lot of you get to see the PFA 100. There was a third cartridge, but it's kind of pointless to use because these 2 do it all. And they're not cheap. Those cartridges are pretty expensive to buy. Now, then what do you go to if What do you go to then if your PFA 100 or bleeding time are truly elevated and it's not aspirin?
Platelet activation.
And which ones are monophasic curves and which ones are biphasic? Okay? Ristocetin and collagen are mono. And what does that mean? Can you see the release reaction or not see the release reaction? You can't. It's such a strong aggregator. You don't see this and then a little hump. You just see one straight. And what happens to the platelet-rich plasma when you know your aggregation works well? It starts out as 10%, hardly any light getting through. What happens when you add the aggregator if you have normal platelet function?
They fall out of solution.
They get clumped, they fall out of solution, it clears it, so a lot of light gets through. And I think the lowest one that it was like 65%. They really get a lot of light through, so some get as much as 90% of light goes through. But if you have problems, how is ristocetin different? Remember, it needs what two things versus what the other aggregators need?
Glycoprotein 1B.
1B and VWF, and the other aggregators need 2B, 3A, 1, and calcium. Okay? So you got to know which ones are monophasic, which ones are biphasic. Tell me what you remember. You don't have to know much about it, the thrombin time, and why it's kind of a useless test unless you remove something. Heparin, and what's the normal? Anybody remember the seconds? 12 to 18. So it measures qualitatively, it'll tell you, yeah, you have enough fibrinogen. Because remember, when you add thrombin, what's it go for? Fibrinogen to the fibrin clot. It bypasses everything. It takes whatever fibrinogen is in your plasma and it makes a fibrin clot. So if you do not remove heparin, and so many patients are on heparin, it's pointless. You're going to be way above 18 seconds, and it has nothing to do with their fibrinogen level. Do you remember the snake test you could do that won't be affected by heparin, but it's still 12 to 18 seconds? Reptilase. Okay? Just if you know that one key thing, it isn't affected by heparin. I don't think you're going to see that test anywhere. Most of the time, they're going to do the fibrinogen level. You make a 1 to 10 dilution, it's not affected by heparin, and you tell the doctor exactly how much level 1 they have, or factor 1. Tell me, how do you know it's factor 13 deficiency and what test confirms it?
5 molar urea.
Okay, so tell me about it. What was the clue that I don't know in the lab that the doctor knows? Because what's normal?
The PT and the PTT.
So you as a lab tech don't know what their problem is. What would the doctor see? Longer time. Okay, so at least a day and a half to 2 days, they might bleed from their site. And then the biggest piece, and then tell me what happens with that reagent. How do we know that 13 isn't good enough? What do you do with that reagent, 5 molar urea? The clot in it, like you could take it from a fibrometer, you know, that little clot, put it in the mill of 5 molar urea, and then when they're deficient, what happens in 24 hours? It goes away. It doesn't look like anything's in there. So it's a very simple test other than taking the 24 hours. And then the substitution studies was the last big piece. You know you're going to get hit with this. And you're going to see it in both ways. You're going to see it like this, and you're going to see it like we have on the board where you guys did the problems. Okay, tell me about what you remember, why, Tiana, since you had the one that you didn't really have a factor deficiency, I'm not on heparin and Coumadin. What does the doctor do now? Tell me what we talked about yesterday that you as a lab tech could do as a screening test. Okay, what could you do to lead them on the right path? What could you as a tech do with the reagents you have to lead them on the path of if it is a specific inhibitor or if it is a lupus inhibitor? Okay, so all you do is incubate. So if your PTT is 45 seconds. All you do is take that PTT reagent, because like if you were doing the MLA 750, it's no big deal to say, okay, I'll set a timer for an hour, the PTT reagent and the plasma, set the timer for an hour, and then come back and add your calcium chloride. So this was the original. If I suspect a lupus anticoagulant or a specific inhibitor, if you know they were hemophilia A or B, tell me what happens to that PTT. I waited the hour, I add the calcium chloride, what happens if it's a lupus inhibitor?
Nothing.
It's non-specific. It won't get any worse if you let it incubate longer. It's just attacking any phospholipid anywhere. It doesn't matter if you give it an hour or 3 to 5 minutes. So it would still stay 45 seconds. What if it's a specific inhibitor? Like if you're a hemophilia A or B person, and this happens and it doesn't correct, you're going to already be suspicious that you have an antibody to factor 8 or 9. That's the inhibitor, the antibody. But if you don't know patient history, you as the lab tech, what would happen if you give it longer for the reagent to act on the plasma? It inhibits more and the PTT gets worse. Whatever they have to make it clot is not going to help. So, here, do you remember what test they can confirm it with? You just have to know the name.
Bethesda.
That Bethesda. Do you know the two, and you don't have to tell me about the two tests on the lupus anticoagulant. Remember the two tests?
TRVVT and the PNP.
Okay, so platelet neutralization procedure is the PNP. That one is the one that has high levels of phospholipid, so the PTT gets better. The dilute Russell Viper venom test, the DRVVT, that one is so dilute, that lupus inhibitor is going to work even better and the PTT gets higher. The doctor chooses one or the other. They're not going to do both. And probably the DRVVT is the most common one that is used. So you don't have to tell me about those two tests. Those are the confirming. So the specific inhibitor is confirmed with the Bethesda. The lupus anticoagulant is confirmed with the DRVVT and or the PNP. Their choice. They're not going to do both. Okay, so that's the circulating anticoagulants. Does everybody get that it doesn't correct with normal plasma? That is your big clue. Then the last thing what we did today. Tell me 6 things that can cause you to clot excessively. Tell me the thing that is commonly a secondary condition that we just talked about. First, the lupus anticoagulant. That's your most common one, but it's not a genetic one. It's secondary to another condition. Okay? What is the 2 most common genetic?
C. With
The most common.
factor 5.
Factor 5 and
Leiden, which is associated with activated protein C resistance, because if you have mutated 5, protein C can't inhibit it. Okay, so they're tied together. What's the second mutation? The prothrombin 20210. I think it begins with a G and ends with an A. That one is the second most common genetic causing blood clots. But that one, does it inhibit any activity or how does it cause this problem?
It increases it.
Too much is made, okay? But they're still the genetic. You are born with them. And then the ones that were in my life most commonly were what 3?
Protein,
S and antithrombotic 3. Those, they just do the test for them and your quantities are low. It's not anything mutated, they're just low amounts. And then, was there a 5th one I'm missing? Oh yeah, the one that causes venous and arterial thrombosis only. Homocysteine. And what does it affect?
It affects
Protein C can't do its job if you have high levels of homocysteine. So all the ones that affected protein C and it's doing its job were homocysteine levels being high, your factor 5 Leiden, and then protein C and S. Okay? So that was kind of the gamut. And your 4 main reasons you clot more?
Family history.
Age, diet, Smoking, family history. Those would be the 4 key. Okay, and you might be seeing questions from the other tests that you missed. Or the common ones missed. Yes?
What was number 5? I got proton mutation, 14 CNS, and 16.
Oh, the 5, so there was lupus anticoagulant, because it was a secondary condition, if you, thrombose, okay? That's the most common one, but it's not genetic. Then the first 2 genetic top ones were factor V Leiden, and it's associated with activated protein C resistance. The protein C won't work. And then prothrombin, that 20210. And then you had, what am I missing? Oh, antithrombin 3, deficient, protein CNS deficient, and then high levels of homocysteine. That's the amino acid that builds up. Okay, so what we'll do Tuesday is we'll take the test first, and you'll have your regular time, and I'm hoping it's a full grade, a 100-point grade. If it's not 75, then it won't be. And then we'll finish the treatments. That's all we have left, are 2 on treatments. And then we'll review for test 5. So I thought you have a lot more days to study for this one than Tuesday to Thursday on that one. I thought the treatments alone would be better.
And for final, do you want us to tell you what day we're coming, or
I'll be here.
both days? Okay, so.
Long as is everybody okay with one of those? Just show up and you get an hour and a half, and I'll be there. I have to be there both days anyway, so.
I had work Monday, and I don't know, they usually schedule me 2, so I didn't know if that would work out or not.
It's your choice. You just show up, either one, you don't have to tell me. Because I have my sophomores, I gotta get their grades probably done Tuesday, and I'll probably get your grades done Tuesday too.
This room?
Yeah, we should be good here. I have all my stuff in the car, but I'm gonna ask them in an email to wear it too, so you can kind of see it on. But I have probably 7, 8 things in my car that'll show you some tie-dye, and it'll show you some hoodies, and it'll show you long sleeve. And then I'm going to send you the link. And I want to try to order them first day of class in June, so we don't get them 4th and 5th weekend. Like Steven in my last class bought 1 t-shirt, and I think they were $5. They're very reasonable for what you get. A hoodie might be, I don't even know if it's over $12. Tie-dyes are a little bit more, and the last 2 years people love the tie-dye. Long sleeve shirts might be $10. So I wear mine a lot to work out, my short sleeve ones. So, and I don't have much less than a large. I might have 1 medium t-shirt. But I can see, well, you'll be able to see some of the other people, and you can ask them, because I'll give you time to talk with them, and then you can say, hey, what size is that, or whatever, if you want to see what a smaller one or a larger one would be. So they're worth it, though. This little place in Alton is very reasonable, and we've been doing it since 2009. One of my students was from Alton, and she knew about this Schwarzkopf shirt place, and very, very reasonable. So it won't be like you're spending a fortune. And what we do is the last day, like in Heme, the last day of the week, you get to wear them instead of scrubs. So you can wear, whatever you want, as long as you don't have open-toed shoes and stuff, and your t-shirt, instead of if you don't want to wear scrubs. So we do it the last day of every week, from here on out then. So I'll send you that link, and then our goal will be, after you see them, our goal will be to, order them first day instead of waiting till 2 and 3 weeks. And does anybody live in the Alton area? I haven't looked at where you guys live. So once they might deliver them. I think last year they did deliver them. Otherwise, I've had a student live there that's got them. Last year, Taylor got them. Her mom worked up there, so I gave her the check. But they're very reasonable, so it's not like it'll cost you a lot, even if you just get one. So I'll bring mine. Plus, if anybody wants to try on mine, and if it's too big, then go smaller, or if it's too little, go bigger. And then I'll have them wear theirs, because they have some really cute ones. The tie-dye are actually pretty neat. Okay, you guys, I will see you Tuesday.
I had a question. I just want to make sure I get. So, snake venom can trigger DIC.
Mhm.
Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, so that's true.
Did I mark all of your guys' number 2 wrong? So that should have, Look at your number 2 of those people that I just gave back.
You wrote okay, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you're
marked them off,
okay.
you printed okay.
But did you all put A or B?
I put A.
Today.
Oh, then give me them back. So I have it wrong. Yeah, at least you guys all have them, and I don't have to have you bring them.
All right, you don't want that.
Spreadsheet, or do you want the?
No, give me everything.
Do you want the extra credit too, or?
No. Yeah, that's a good point. And then if, Amanda, if you hang out just a minute, I'll go grade it real quick. Yeah, since I gave them back, you don't have to study these till the final, so.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
sorry.